Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to view Power Rangers episodes. So, I'm going to go on and cover Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 3, Episodes 17 and 18, A Ranger Catastrophe. Then, of course, I'm going on and covering Power Rangers Zeo, Episode 35, Mondo's Last Stand. So, we have this Mighty Morphin two-parter. We have Catherine coming in, but these two episodes are seemingly to be both Aisha and Tommy episodes, where it seems that they're to kind of have stories going on in both of these. And so we then go on into the Power Rangers Zeo episode, and that ends up becoming a Rocky story, as well as Mondo, where we have Mondo that is going to realize that out of all the monsters that have gone on and gotten defeated, it's like, well, Mondo is to say, it's like, well, hey, if you can't get it done right, do it yourself. And we have Rocky, who's getting whispered sweet nothings from Bulk and Skull, telling him, it's like, well, hey, like, Jason's here. Hey, like, look at his pecs, look at his muscle definition. Wow, like, he's really in shape. And so on and so forth. And Rocky is to realize, like, well, hey, like, yeah, I guess I'm not, like, the Ranger that I used to be. So maybe I should go on and, like, improve, prove my worth. And it's like, no, like, Rocky, like, you're fine, man. Like, if anything, you're at least one of the Rangers. Like, yeah, like, after, like, the sixth Ranger and the red one, a lot of times, like, the other Rangers kind of get lost in the shuffle, because that's just how they write the shows. But anyways, so we go on in the Mighty Morphin episodes. We have Aisha, who is working at an animal shelter, and it seems that she is to go on and find this cat that is to actually be a character that eventually will be called Catherine, or Cat. And so we have within the episodes that Catherine is to go on and kind of start to separate Aisha and Kimberly, and also try and, or not separate, try and go on and distract both Aisha and Kimberly, while also going on to get to Tommy and try to kind of put him away into a wormhole that takes him off into a cave-like area to fight off Goldar. So we go on and have these episodes that are overall to just be good episodes. And so I did like them. I did enjoy them. So with that said, let's go on and just get into that double 5-time territory. And hopefully we'll go on into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time to get into spoil this episode. So, the funny thing about the Power Rangers Zeo episode that I noticed, it's like, man, we have to, like, bring in a sword in for everything. I'm not going to go on and cover the Zeo episode first, but I just thought it was, like, so goofy how we always have to bring in some sword, like the Sword of Power, or there's, like, the sword that has to go on and, like, transfer power to certain Rangers, and there always has to be, like, some like, quest made to eventually get the Rangers back their power, or to help, like, kind of like the Operation Overdrive episodes where Adam comes back and has his own team from all the Rangers from all the other seasons, yada yada yada. So we then go on to let's go into the Mighty Morphin episodes, and then we'll get into the Zeo one. So we have Aisha that is go on and bring this dog in to this veterinarian, They end up stating, I think in the episode, Aisha states, like, at first, I think she says the name Willer, but then I think she says Wheeler later on. So I'm like, which is it? Is it Dr. Willer or is it Dr. Wheeler? I'm assuming it's Wheeler. So that's what it seemed that it sounded like that Aisha stated. So, Wheeler is to go on and state that this dog has a clean bill of health, and we have kind of Aisha and this doctor kind of buttering one another up, as we of course have the doctor that states, it's like, well, hey, yeah, there's never enough funding for this animal shelter, and it's great that you go on and volunteer. And Aisha's like, well, yeah, it's like, it's really great, like, working with you in this kind of capacity, where of course Aisha isn't getting paid. She's of course possibly just getting experience, maybe somewhere down the road, to eventually go on and either be a veterinarian or to go on and just hopefully get another job after this. So we have Aisha and Kimberly who are just kind of walking through this park, and I'm like, oh no, some awful's gonna go down, some horrible, because they're in a park. So we have Aisha and Kimberly talking, and so Kimberly states to Aisha, it's like, well, like, don't you feel so bad that those animals don't have a home? And Aisha's like, well, like, the doctor takes care of them, so, like they have some kind of human companionship going on into this animal shelter at some point. So, we all of a sudden have these two girls go on and find this white cat in the middle of this park. So they're standing on, well, there's no one's around, and we also are to realize that this cat has no tag. So they're like, well, hey, like, if like no one's around, maybe we can kind of keep this cat for ourselves. Maybe it's just some stray. So we have Rita, who is looking through her repulsor scope, part 2, because of course the one that they had before was some black one. Now this is like a silverish looking one, silverish gray. Let's go with gray. Whatever color it is, it could be numerous colors at one point in time, right? Because wouldn't it be great if we go on and we always have rangers that always have to have the same color all the time? Wouldn't it be just cool if you could just kind of play around with the colors for like a couple of episodes out of the season, where you would go on and have the rangers at some point being like a red ranger for one episode, kind of like how Sky was in SPD, with the whole reflection story, to finally give like rangers different freaking colors, so that way it's not such a big problem when rangers would be like, oh, well, I'm like relegated to like the blue and down color, or oh yeah, I'm the green color, I'm the black color, and so on and so forth. So even though a lot of people are just like, dude, I want XYZ color, like that color is great. Like everybody always loves the green ranger or the blue rangers or the black rangers. Anyways, if I were to have not got, I would never want the red ranger color. I'd probably want to go on and be like a green or a black. To me, I always liked the green or the black ones. The black rangers and the green rangers. Kind of clarifying that. So, we have Zed kind of poking over at Rita, like, hey, what are you doing? So, what are you up to? Rita is to state that cat was bait, but she really doesn't go into much of that. So, we have Aisha that goes to the juice bar, and I think it's the outside portion now, even though this is still Mighty Morphin. We don't fully commit to like an outdoor juice bar, but still. So we have all 4 of them, and so Aisha states that if no one calls for this cat, that that they will, like, both Aisha and Kimberly will claim this cat. And we have Bulk and Skull who are to mention about all the health violations that they are violating by having this cat here. And Aisha's like, well, hey, like, I'm going to take this to the animal shelter. I'm just having it now. So, we have Bulk and Skull. They're just like, well, hey, like, well, if we go on and we find the owners of this cat, like, we're going to have women love us. And we're going to have, like, a bunch of people just go on and just, like, cheer our names in the street and all kinds of things. Because one little thing that they go on and do will all of a sudden have them get, like, worldwide renown, it seems. It's very bizarre. But so we have Rito that is kind of here, like Bulk and Skull, who are trying to find owners for this cat. So we have Rito that goes to the animal shelter to try to scare away any people that are going to go to this animal shelter, while Aisha is working inside. We have Aisha that is to go on and ask Dr. Wheeler if she's to go on and hear anything. And we have Dr. Wheeler that states, it's like, well, no, like, with all the animals that are barking and meowing and all the noise, like, how could anybody go on and hear anything? So we have Bulk and Skull that sees Rito, and they're thinking, like, well, hey, let's go on and let's bust it. Like, let's bust this character. And because they realize that if like, the cat might be out of the bag for them to go on and find this cat, then maybe they can go on and arrest Rito and have, like, them with their fame and fortune and people licking their boots. I don't know. So we go on to have Bulk and Skull that get closer and closer to Rito, and it ends up kind of being like how in the beginning of, like, the Ghostbusters movie goes, where we have the three people that are just like, okay, like, get closer, all right, like, get her, and then the thing spooks them, and then they back off. So Bulk and Skull are mentioning that they definitely need to go on and get back up, and they're like, well, yeah, we're gonna get way back up. So we have Aisha that is going on to hear the screamings of Bulk and Skull, because of course she can go on to easily hear their screamings. So, because before Rito was going and scare a number of rando people from getting to the animal shelter. So we have Aisha that goes on to make her way to fight against Rito, and she's doing a pretty good job. I don't know why they had to call the other Rangers, because Aisha was mopping the floor with Rito anyways. But so Zordon is to call the Rangers and be like, hey, like, Aisha and Rito are fighting, so you guys gotta handle this. So the rest of the Rangers were at the juice bar. Rocky was going on and having a sandwich, and so they're like, oh, okay, well, I guess we need to go. So we have Zed stating to Rita, it's like, well, hey, this plan better be worth it. So we have Goldar that tells Zed, it's like, well, hey, putties, get the putties. And we have Zed who's like, dude, I was gonna get the putties. Shut up. That was my plan all along. Get the Tangas. Get the Tangas out there, not the putties, the Tangas. Get everything out there. Just throw a sink at them. Just do everything. Which monster and foot soldiers are we even having in this season? Who knows? We've done this for too long. So we have the Tangas that arrive against the Power Rangers. So we have some, like, goofy one-off things that the Rangers do as ninjas, because they always had these kind of, like, goofy things that they did. So Adam has this kind of weird, like, energy blast thing kind of coming from his hands as he is to kind of, like, toss it off as if he's, like, tossing cards to these Tangas, and they end up getting hit with this energy, like, thing, and they end up getting knocked out. We also had Rocky, who is to kind of, like, walk backwards into this tree, and we end up having the Tangas that are like, well, hey, where's the door, man? So we all of a sudden have Rocky who are to kick and punch the Tangas, and then he kind of pokes his head out of the tree. and then you just kind of see like the back half of the tree with just like nothing there. So we realized that that Rocky had gone inside the tree. So we then have Catherine that transforms back to like actual Catherine from being this white cat, and we go on and be like, aha! So the Tangas disappear. Rito smacks into this tree, and so we have Dr. Wheeler that is meeting with Catherine, like, well, hey, what are you doing here? And Catherine's like, oh, well, like, I came here to, like, adopt a dog. Yeah, that's what I want to do. So Rocky ends up going on and talking about his sandwich that he hopes it's still there at the juice bar. So we have we have we have Kimberly and we have Aisha who are coming for the cat. So they're kind of looking around, making their way through this animal shelter because they realize that it's like, well, hey, like this has been more than long enough. After this kind of day is done, like we can go back into the animal shelter and kind of claim this cat now. So we have Tommy, Aisha, and Kimberly that are to see the cat walk up as now Dr. Wheeler is realizing that of like, well, hey, like I was just talking to this lady and all of a sudden she's gone. We have at some points where a lot through when Catherine is to like be on the show here in this two-parter, they end up all talking about her accent and I'm like, well, hey, where are you from? Yeah, I'm from Australia. Oh, yeah. So it's like, wow, she has a really nice accent. So I thought it was just so funny. So we have the doctor that realizes that Catherine had disappeared. So Aisha ends up calling the cat Park Cat because I guess since the Power Rangers fight at the park all the time and they had spotted her in the park, it is to be the perfect name, but then they end up calling her PC. Political correctness. Anyways, this cat isn't very PC now, is it? So we then go on to have Kimberly and Aisha who take the cat home, and we go on to have Kim talking about how like she's gonna go on with Tommy to the movies because she's been so distracted with gymnastics lately that like both her and Tommy haven't had a lot of alone time. And Aisha states that Tommy's a really great guy. I don't think he has any problems with it. So, with the exclusion of at some point within these episodes, we find Tommy who is dipping his head into some other woman's car. Still. So, yeah, so we go on to have the cat who is to walk off, and so Aisha is to realize that in another room there's a lot of windows that are open because they haven't cat-proofed the house yet. So Catherine goes outside, and both Kim and Aisha are both kind of scrambling to find out where the cat is. We have Catherine that goes on to talk to Rita, and it's mentioned that both Aisha and Kim are looking for the cat, and that Kimberly is supposed to go on with Tommy to the movies. And so Rita's like, okay, that's a great update. And so we have Rita that goes on to state to Catherine, so, well, hey, like, you need to go on and you need to get to Tommy. So I'm going to go on and give you this car as a way to have a way to talk to Tommy. So we have Rita, who is vastly experienced with dumpsters, so much so that she is to be able to turn one into a car. So we then go back to the juice bar where Tommy is waiting on Kat, because heaven forbid you have Tommy, who is to be right in front of a movie theater because, of course, uh, like how many set pieces can really they have on this show? Plus, also there's certain times where in uh, like certain things we would find out like certain rangers would go on and try to go like shopping or grocery shopping or whatever one day and find out they were get like mobbed by people and so like well yeah I guess I can't go on and shop anymore. Yeah, that's what happens when you end up having a very popular show and everybody's like oh my god like it's the guy I saw on TV, wow this is great. But anyways, so Uh, but hey, like eventually, at some point, for anybody that would reach any kind of uh, branch of fame of whatever, at some point, yeah, it would be really hard for you to go on and go anywhere. But again, that's what online shopping now is for. You can go on and have your own privacy at your own home, but have a bunch of crap just to deliver to you all the time. So we at the juice bar have Kat that is to talk to Tommy and to state that her car has something wrong with it. So Tommy goes on and tells Ernie, it's like, well, hey, if Kimberly gets here, like, tell her that I'll be right back. And Ernie's like, okay, great. So Tommy goes to fix Catherine's car and realizes, like, well, man, I've never driven one of these before. It would be pretty great if I went on and just drove this car. Catherine's like, well, how about you? How about you just go ahead and drive this car? And Tommy's like, sure, yeah. And we'll probably end up in a wormhole together, but still, it'd be great. So we have Bulk and Skull that bring Stone to the animal shelter, where, of course, they had this Rito sighting. And we, of course, have Stone that doesn't go on and see anything. So he immediately tells both Bulk and Skull that that he's gonna go on and have them do like car washing duty for I don't know how long. So we have Tommy and Catherine ending up in this wormhole. And so Catherine is to kind of hold on to Tommy and be like, oh my god, Tommy, this is crazy. Like, where are we? And Tommy's like, I don't know. So we have Rita who's looking through the repulsor scope too. And so she's like, yeah, like this plan is coming together. So they are to go on and toss Rito out there yet again to make him grow. So this could be a distraction. So we go on to have both Kim and Aisha who cannot find this cat and they make their way to the command center. Or no, they make their way to the juice bar. And so we end up having Ernie who is to talk to Kim and say like, well, hey, like, yeah, Tommy was to try to fix somebody's car, but he said he'll be right back. So Billy all of a sudden ends up getting a communicator call, and we end up having Billy getting a call from Zordon to go to the command center. So all the Rangers go on to the command center as they were, of course, at the juice bar. So, with the exclusion of Tommy. So, we have Alpha that states that Tommy's in trouble, and they state that they have a visual Tommy, but nothing else. They can't go on and teleport him out of there because there is a shield being in place. So, Kim goes on and states, like, well, who's that girl? Like, hey, somebody, like, stealing my man? So, we also on the viewing globe is to find out that Rito is to turn massive. And so we, of course, have the Rangers that are like, what are we going to do? Like, there's so many things going on. So they all of a sudden find out that they had lost the signal on the viewing globe of either Tommy and Rito. So Billy tries to go on and fix it. So Rita and Zed are to have Catherine come back to them as this cat. And so we have Rita who is going on and praising the cat, stating that she's going to give her a bowl of milk. So we have Goldar that goes on to awake Tommy in this cave. And so back at the command center, we have Billy, who can't seem to get the viewing globe to work. And so he's like, well, hey, uh, we don't have enough time for this. But I'm hoping that Tommy's okay. We need to go on and focus on Rito, and we need to morph. So we go on, have the Rangers who morph. They get into all of their Zords, and we have the bear that goes on to attack Rito. We have the toad that goes on and kind of does this kind of a tongue attack. That's to be this kind of really interesting attack. We have the crane that kind of flies by and blasts away at Rito, and then we have the ape that goes on and kind of uses his sabers, and I think he combines them together or tries to go on and attack Rito. We have Rito, who is to counter this attack from the ape Zord by doing his flamethrower cannon. So we then have the Rangers that all turn into the Ninja Megazord. Oh, because I didn't go on and say that I'm actually wearing a Power Rangers shirt today. Isn't that great? Because normally I don't go on and wear the Power Ranger shirts while I'm reviewing these, but I don't know how many days that I've gone on and done this, but I haven't had a Power Ranger shirt on all that often. But anyways, I eventually do have them on the thumbnails. Some of them, like 4 or 5 of them, and then some other ones are to be what they are, to showcase things. Anyways, so we go on to, of course, have the Ninja Megazord that goes into its Power Punch to, of course, defeat Rito. But Rito just goes back to the Moon Palace, and that really was to be like, wow, that's really it. That's all you guys got for me for the monster side of things. Wow, that kind of sucks. So we go back to the command center, and so Billy is to hopefully try and trace the signal from Tommy's watch, and they find out that the signal, they can't go on and teleport Tommy out. So we have Golar, who is to be fighting, it seems, with Tommy, or kind of getting things going here. So we have Tommy that goes on and even talks to Rita as a weird, goofy hologram that we can barely see. And I was just like, you know what? Why not just have Rita just actually there? And when Tommy would maybe go for a strike, it's like, oh, well, she's just a hologram. But you can actually see her physically there. But it's just like a computer thing that they didn't even need to do. Anyways, pushing on. So we have both Billy and Adam that are coming up with an idea that they can possibly, in the command center, that they could possibly break through the shield by putting together some device in Billy's lab. So Goldar and Tommy are fighting, and so Rita is to go on and say, it's like, well, you know what, I'm really going to miss that, Tommy. We also have Babu and Squat that are just like, well, hey, it seems like they're gonna come up with some device to get to figure out a way to save Tommy. It's like, maybe we should come up with a plan B. It's like, well, yeah. So we have both Adam and Billy that are kind of getting to the lab, and we have Catherine, aka Cat, that turns to Catastrophe and is to distract both of the Rangers. And so we have the Rangers that go on to morph, and so we have Catastrophe that vanishes, and so Billy is to remind Adam, it's like, well, hey, let's get back to the lab. So we have Rita that sends Rito to help out Goldar, because again, you have to have that 1-2 punch between both Rito and Goldar to just be goofily enough, like not exactly the best fighting duo, but like Goldar fights were always good. So we have Tommy that is fighting Goldar, and at some point he ends up kind of losing Saba, and he ends up like desperately needing to have like Saba like as like a force power, like, hey, come back to me, Saba. As like Saba would go on and kind of fly over the place and be whatever Tommy needed him to be at some thing. Like watch the Power Rangers movie where like Saba goes on and like lasers the one thing and has the like this big thing go crashing down on these ooze goons. The Oozlings or the Uzis, whatever their goofy name was. So we have Tommy that ends up even getting like held back by Rito, so Goldar can get some punches in or some kicks in, or get his wings in there. Just flap him with the wings. Just hit him with the wings. Just go on and just smack him around with the wings. So just go ahead and just do it. So we then have Rocky calling Billy, and they can't find the frequency yet to retrieve Billy. And so then finally Billy did figure out the frequency. And so when Adam and Billy go back to the command center, we have Billy that's just like, you know what, I don't even see the girl back there. Like, so we have the Rangers hold hands in a circle like they did in the movie, except for in this time, instead of them going up, like they would go on and do like the up holding hands thing, they would hold hands down to the ground. And so we would go on and need them to like, well, hey, like these guys are going to go on and need extra power. So they hold hands, and then Tommy teleports back right as Tommy was like, hey, and he was going to get hit and taken out by Goldar. So we have Rita and Zed who are arguing over that failure, and so they're like, well, where's Kat? Where's Catherine? So we have the cat that goes on, or catastrophe that goes on to grow, make my monster grow moment, and so we have the Ninja Megazord and Ninjor coming in. Ninjor! He comes in flying on the cloud this time. I'm like, yeah. That's how you should always have Ninjor just come in. Even if it doesn't make sense, just always have him be rocking that cloud. So we go on, I think, to have Ninjor go into his warrior mode or his battle mode. And so we go on to have the Rangers that end up kind of having both of these. I think we do like the double punch combo, and that takes Catherine out, or Catastrophe out. But like we still have Kat, who's still alive. She's still there. So it's kind of weird how we can have so many characters get like the final strike of a Zord, but it's not always effective. Isn't that kind of weird? How it always, like, the final strike of a Zord just doesn't work all that well. But it works on every other monster. I guess, like, there's just some monsters that are just more powerful for whatever goofy reason. So we then have the Power Rangers unmorphed. They end up re-meeting up with Catherine, and so Catherine is to state, it's like, well, hey, like, like I was so scared by the witch, and I was like, ah. And so we now have to like justify like, okay, where was that girl? Where was Catherine that whole time? And so Tommy tells her it's okay now, and at some point we're gonna be lovers. But Kimberly, thanks for that Dear John letter. Always have to come back to that. It's always a funny thing. But so we have Catherine that states that she's new in town and that she's still going through some unpacking. And so the Rangers are going on and like, well, yeah, like it seems that this girl is like really nice. We like her accent. Yeah, that's all great. So like that's how they kind of play them out of the episode. So let's get into uh, the next bit of this. So I think we also have the like when Catherine leaves. I think that's when the cat re-shows back up and like, oh my god, the cat, and that's how I think the end of the episode. I think from what I remember. So moving on to now the Power Rangers Zeo episode. We're 36 minutes in. Wow, that's surprising because I assumed that this would take about an hour because that's usually how long it takes. There's sometimes where it takes an hour and a half, but that's usually because of me just having too many jokes or having me too much fun or me just going on and just rambling like I'm doing right now. So that's great. So now let's go into the Power Rangers Zeo episode. So we have a bunch of the Rangers that are all just sparring it out. And so, one thing that I want to go on and state, this isn't like me trying to delay anything, but still, I was to actually go on and watch this one interview that Jason David Frank did, and he was talking about mental health. It seems like that was like the focus interview, and I thought that that was great. I really like was so intrigued by that interview, and I think the YouTuber that went on and did it was like CJ something. Heaven forbid but um, but yeah. So Jason David Frank was doing this like mental health interview, and it was so interesting to just hear him talk about like something like other than Power Rangers. But it was also really interesting for him to talk about his video that he did on his video or his YouTube channel, where he did the thing called In My Head, and he did the mask thing that I thought was like so interesting, is like poetry, and like Tommy is to go on and or Tommy, Jason David Frank is to of course really like poetry, and it's kind of interesting to kind of just see that side of Tommy, or Jason David Frank, my bad. So I really liked that interview. It was really interesting. Of course, I would always like to just kind of like treat a ranger as like an everyday person. Like, well, hey, like, what movies do you like most? Like, hey, like, what things do you usually watch? And just kind of common talk. Instead of having to go on and just like, well, yeah, like, what's your favorite color? And if you were ever to go on and go back into a season, like, what season would you like to be in? Because like, there's always just kind of common questions, but again, I'm sure a lot of times, like, to always be like, well, hey, man, like, there's always so many times when people will ask me the exact same question, but I always like that question. So, like, give it to me 50 bajillion times, I might have the same answer, but maybe I'll answer it in a different way. Like, well, yeah, like, if I wasn't to be, like, the color that I was on my season, I would be blah, blah, blah color. For me, I'd probably want to go on and either be a green or a black ranger, because those rangers are always really cool. But yeah, but when it comes down to it, like, just to be, like, a ranger, period, would be freaking great. Even though when looking at it, like being on the show, like probably working like possibly 16 hours a day. Yeah. Depending on like the Power Rangers, like you would also have to be like really good in certain things also, like being a really good gymnast or fighting skill or dance or whatever. Heaven forbid I would have any talent of that. Heaven forbid I could even walk straight half of the day. So, with that said, we go on into this Power Rangers Zeo episode. So, we. Oh, I'd also watched the Super Ninja Steel, kind of the behind the scenes from that episode. And it was also really interesting that, like, when Jason and Frank would go into this car, like, the car wouldn't start. It's like, well, yeah, I'm sure for a lot of those shows and movies, there'd be so many problems with, like, certain set pieces and all kinds of stuff that maybe the set piece would break, or a lot of flimsy stuff coming out of shows. It sucks. But anyways, let's go into this Zeo episode. So we have at the beginning of this where like Jason and Adam are sparring. It's like, oh wow, cool. Like we get to see Jason mixing up with some of the Rangers and having these kind of cool moments. So we have Kat and Tanya kind of looking on it like, wow, like Jason and is looking really good. It's like, yeah, Adam, like, yeah. So kind of complimenting them. So Rocky is looking at Tommy. It's like, well, hey, how about we like kind of spar next? And Tommy's like, well, yeah, like, but I already promised Jason that I would kind of spar with him. Rocky's like, oh, okay. So Rocky is just kind of be left on his own, and we have all of a sudden that Bulk and Skull are looking at like, oh, like, hey, like Jason and Tommy are fighting. Yeah, like we remember that rivalry spell. Man, was that a great episode, right? Jason and fighting again. Like, yeah, like if only we could have had them go on and fight that one time, and like we could have got all those money from all those tickets that we. Anyways, so we have Rocky that might be feeling that he's getting replaced. So we have Mondo that is now in the Machine Empire. Coming to find out, I never really like put two and two together here. Maybe because there's just certain episodes where I didn't see between Mighty Morphin and Zeo that could have helped me figure this out. Like I never really knew where the Machine Empire actually was as far as the setting was. But when really thinking about it, Rita and Zed like were to be kicked out of their moon palace and were to be forced to go into their mobile RV. And I was like, okay, why is that? But then I would go on to realize it's like, oh, like so, like Mondo and Queen Machina and Sprocket and Clink and all those people, they ended up taking over the moon and they started like mining the moon. So I was like, oh, okay, and they have their own like moon palace. So, man, did we just stick with that moon palace for I don't know how long until they finally decided, like, well, hey, let's get past that. Let's go elsewhere. Like, let's just kind of put these people on a ship or a sub or some goofy thing, and justify a different kind of approach. So we go and have Mondo, who is talking about Punch a Bunch, Leaky Faucet, Main Drain, Drill Master, all being defeated. And he's like, well, how could this have all happened? How could all of my best and brightest just gotten, like, their butts handed to them by the Rangers? It's like, well, so we have Queen Machina, who is like, well, none of them had your battle sense. None of them were as skilled as you were, Mondo. And so Mondo was like, well, yeah, like if you want to do something right, you got to do it yourself. So Mondo is like, well, yeah, I'm going to go on and I'm going to go against the Rangers, but I think I need a little extra added, like bonus. I need a little extra added equipment to possibly whip the Rangers into shape, or whip them to just beat them. So we have Rocky who is talking to Billy, and Rocky's like, "Oh, Billy, you're in the juice bar. Like, I've never seen you anywhere else besides the power chamber." And like Rocky thought that Billy like lived there, and so Billy states, "Well, yeah, like I'm having Tommy teach me a new kata," and so we all of a sudden have Billy who kind of goes off to get some training done with Tommy, and so we all of a sudden have Bulk and Skull that are whispering sweet nothings to Rocky, telling Rocky, it's like, well, hey, that Jason, he's looking pretty good. Oh, yeah, look at his pecs. Look at that muscle definition. Look at his huevos. Like, Rocky's like, what? We don't see huevos on a child's show. It could be for a family show. It could be. But so, we go on have like Focus goes like he must be working out, yeah. Yeah. So we have all this like whispering sweet nothings to Rocky, making him going on and just be like, oh my god, like yeah, like maybe Rocky is the better ranger because he's really just the sixth ranger, and the sixth ranger is usually just really cool, as well as also the green and black. But then also you have the red who always gets these battleizers and whatever. And but still, I always liked the sixth ranger or the green and black ranger whenever they would not be the sixth ranger for whatever goofy reason. So, anyways, let's get past that. So we all of a sudden have Stone, who is to mention to Bulk and Skull that he has a new client called Heretta Gerard, and so it seems that this client is to be missing some burble baby food mascot. I guess like Wendy's lady was all out, so they had to go on with some rando baby. So we have the Burble Baby Food Foundation is looking for their lost nephew, and Skull goes on and states like, well, yeah, like I used to like eat baby food all the time. It was great. So even almost stating that he still eats it. So we go on to have Harriet that's like, well, hey, $10,000 to find this guy who should be now a teenager. It's like $10,000? Holy yeah, Bulk and Skull, you better get that baby. You gotta just find any dude, just like say, yeah, this is the Burble Baby kid. Yeah, that's who it is. So we have Rito and Goldar that end up getting teleported to this rando location. And so we go on to have them find the mobile base RV, and they're like, well, hey, like, what is this? And so Rito is like, well, hey, whoever it is, they're riding in style. Rita ends up opening the door, like, hey, get in here, you goons. And so we go on to have Mondo, who is looking for the Damocles sword. Because we always have to have a billion freaking different swords that have this, like, one-time use and one-time use only. Man, you know what Power Rangers should do at some point? Just bring back a sword randomly. To just be like, hey, man, like, remember this sword from season blah, 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 blah? Isn't that great that we have this sword come in here for reasons that don't make sense? But hey, it's cool, right? So, we have Mondo, Queen Machina, Sprocket, and so they're making their way to this sword, the Damocles sword, and so we come to find out that Mondo had hid away this sword, and it's like, well, that doesn't sound good. He hid it underground, and so we have Bulk and Skull who are going on to look at Jason and be like, well, hey, maybe he's the Burble Baby, and maybe we should try to just get his fingerprints, and maybe there's a DNA that matches with his nephew, because Jason had just came back in town, so he must be the purple baby. So we have both Bulk and Skull that are distracting Jason, and it's kind of funny how like Bulk and Skull is like, well, hey, or like Bulk is like, well, hey, like how was that peace conference? And Jason was like, well, yeah, it's good, it's great, and they were trying to get his fingerprints. So we end up having the Rangers who get a call. Jason tries to walk off to get with the Rangers, but instead he gets distracted by Bulk and Skull. And we immediately find out that Jason's watch is to fall off because, of course, Jason went on and mentioned in some interview that his watch tends to, or was to be broken anyway, so I'm sure easily his watch was to fall off. So, it's the way it is, like, I guess they just didn't have duct tape in those parts of the show. Just, yeah, like, I don't know how many things would probably have to go on and just be duct taped back together, and it would just be like, wow, that just doesn't look that good. But so, we have the communicator, and so Zordon is to have the Rangers. What am I even saying here? So they go on and they like Zordon is to stay with the Rangers that King Mondo has been spotted. But weirdly enough, we have King Mondo who is to have some unusual shield. Man, and we have like all these main villains that have these shield things. So that forbids them from teleporting. So Tommy's like, well, we'll just get the Zeo jet cycles and we'll just drive our way there. But you couldn't have just also gone on and just had them like being teleported to like the closest location. But that's just me. So we have Tommy that asks before they go anywhere. Tommy's like, well, hey, where's Jason? And Rocky states, it's like, well, hey, yeah, Bulk and Skull had stopped Jason. It's like, well, hey, like, if you want to go on and wait around for him to just show up, then, like, maybe we should do that because he's, like, the Gold Ranger, right? So, Tommy's like, no, that'll be fine. And it's, so then Tommy ends up looking at Billy. It's like, well, hey, sadly enough, you're not a Ranger, so you should go back to the power chamber. And Billy's like, okay, I'll go to the yeah, I might as well, like, because I live there, you know, as Rocky is the state. So we go on and have the Rangers who are to fight against the Cogs. So we have Tommy who is to see Mondo, Sprocket, and Machina off in the distance. And so we have, of course, Tommy who is to tell Rocky, it's like, well, hey, like, you go on and you kind of, like, take it from here as Tommy's going to go on and try to fight off, or fight with King Mondo. So we have King Mondo that goes on and gets the Sword of Damocles. So we have the power chamber where Billy is to go on and state it's like, well, hey, like, we should go on and we should teleport Jason's communicator to find out what had happened. Because, like, I guess we might as well just keep the watch if we can't find the Ranger. So we have Bulk and Skull who are at their office, and they realize that Jason's bracelet had fell off. They call it a bracelet instead of a communicator. So they're playing around with it, and all of a sudden the bracelet vanishes, and like, oh my god. So we have the Rangers that are like, well, hey, we need to find Jason. And we have, like, Billy going through these doors, and Rocky's, like, trying to go through the doors also. And the door, like, closes in on him. So we have Mondo, who has the Sword of Damocles, and he ends up becoming giant-sized Mondo. Not fun-size, not family size, just giant size Mondo. So we have Rocky that goes on to call for his Super Zord as he is to go on and see King Mondo, and instead of calling for the rest of the Rangers via his communicator, he goes on to instead decide that he is going to take on Mondo by himself with the Sword of Damocles. It's like, well, yeah, I think I can just go on and just smack around Mondo. It's great. Like, so we have Rocky that becomes his own Super Zord, and he won't end up like Billy, where Billy goes on and takes care of business with his Super Wolf Sword or whatever it's called, from the Ninja Wolf Sword, where it ends up becoming like the Shogun Zord. Maybe it's the Shogun Wolf Sword. Anyways, there's so many Zords. So we have Rocky who tries to whip out his Super Zord power axes, because I couldn't figure out what the weapon name of that was. So we have the Sword of Damocles that just goes on and just destroys those axes. And so Rocky's like, well, like, I guess I'm no match for Mondo. I need to retreat. So Rocky goes back to the power chamber. And so we have on the viewing globe that Mondo is making his way to the city. And Rocky's like, oh, I blame myself for that horrible mistake. We're just taking on Mondo by myself. So we go on to have the Rangers realize as they make their way to the power chamber that they need to get this power booster from one of the old Zords to do the Super Zeo Megazord, because I think it's about that time to just Megazord this whole thing up. So we come to find out that Billy is like, well, yeah, like, the bad thing of it is I just took that piece to the Angel Grove Recycling because the parts just got mixed up. So we have Jason needing to go on and run off to get this part at this recycling place, and we have the Rangers that go on and are in the Super Zeo Megazord, which I'm like, okay, so what do they need the part for? Just to just be more powerful? Things are falling apart here, story. So we have Jason who is to go on and find this piece. I believe he ends up having to forcibly fight Cogs also. So Jason is to state that like finding this was like finding a needle in a haystack, but he finds the piece, and so Jason is to tell Billy to teleport this piece, or teleport this part. So Billy is to teleport the part and then have the part go into the Zord, and so we now have the power booster installed. So we now have Queen Machina and Sprocket that are watching on it like, oh no, like, this may not go on so well. So we have King Mondo that is kind of whipping out his Sword of Damocles, and when he swings, we have the Zord that like kind of like unpieces itself to get. I almost smacked myself in the head. We are kind of fingered myself in the head. So we have Mondo that goes on and swings with his sword to then have the Zord all come like into a number of pieces, and then it reforms. I was like, oh wow, that was pretty cool. Like if only we could kind of have that thing kind of going on where pieces would just kind of fall off, and it'd be like, oh, I sliced you. No, like we just have like the Hulk Buster kind of thing going on where we just have the Zords that just kind of and just come right back. It's a whole like magnetic thing. Wouldn't that be sweet? We can go on and have like the Zord that just like is to be kind of set off like rockets and just like fire away, and then it comes back together, and maybe that should be like the the big attack that you go on and you can like separate the Zord, the Megazord, into like these kind of like rocket like maneuvers, and then it reforms back, and like that's how you go on and you defeat the characters. And you can also go on and have certain pieces where like the monster like catches it and is like ha ha ha, like that didn't go as well as you thought it would, now did it? And like, oh wow, that's a cool way, that's a cool thing to do. So uh anyways, have uh we have going on here, we have the twin Zeo sabers that come out, and so they decide to combine the duo sabers together to make the Super Zeo saber. So uh we have Queen Machina that's like, oh my god, like this has happened before. And Sparkle's like, what? And so we have the Zora that goes on and wipes out Mondo, and they're like, oh my god, like we've wiped out King Mondo. This is amazing. But again, we'll eventually find out that characters like Prince Gasket will eventually get his time in the sun. So we are to be back at the juice bar, and so we have Jason who's smacking at this heavy bag. And so we have Bulk and Skull who are grabbing Jason, like, well, hey, this has to be the verbal baby. And so when Harriet comes in and is stated, like, well, hey, like, I luckily was to be able to find this nephew, and come to find out it's not Jason, it's actually Ernie. I'm like, well, of course it is, because it makes the most sense. And so we all of a sudden have Harriet that is the state, since Ernie was this baby, that he'll go on and get this like lifetime supply of this baby food. And Ernie's like, well, I don't know what to do with that. And he's like, oh my god, wait a minute, like baby food smoothies. Oh my god, Harriet, you and I, let's go to this office and let's write out this whole contract right now. I'll be making baby food smoothies. It'll be great. All the women will love it. And all the men will too. So, we have Rocky that goes on to go to the group, and he's like, well, hey guys, like, I'm sorry that I was like selfishly thinking that I can go on and just defeat King Mondo by myself. And we have Jason that's like, hey man, like I'm on your side, man, like whatever you're feeling about all the Rangers. It's like, well, hey, like you're not the lowest guy on the totem pole. Like, think of all the other Rangers that end up probably thinking that they're on the lowest point of the totem pole, but still. So, but they also have to reflect on the fact that they won. They beat King Mondo. They're like, oh my god, like, this has never happened before. So, we have Rita that's like, well, yeah, like, I can take over while Mondo is gone. And so, we now have Rita that's like, yeah, I no longer have a headache. So yeah, so that ends up being the end of these episodes. Oh my god, it took an hour after all. God dang it, I was trying to, like, as much as possible to think that I was gonna just squeak all this information within less than an hour. But freaking, that's what happens when you try to just think that you're gonna speed it up one day. So, bye everybody. Bye everybody.